my channel. Today is going to be a fairly in-depth tutorial related to how to build your very own Fuggly doll, Fuggler. Obviously this is inspired by the Fuggler doll, and this tutorial came about because I got my Year 9 design students to create their own Fugglers. If you want to see those, they are over on my Instagram. There'll be a corresponding pattern that you can print to use at your own leisure. The link to the pattern will be in the description box. It is free. I drew up the pattern myself and did a bunch of samples just to work out if it would actually sew up and how to do that. Yeah, so from that point I made a sample to show the kids how to do it, and I created a very, very basic outline pattern that they used. There's a variation in the pattern for if you want your Fuggly monster doll thing to have an open mouth or a closed mouth. They are different. The open mouth is more so it's easier for you to put your teeth in. The closed mouth is probably more advanced, I'd say, this mouth. The closed mouth is the more basic version, and if I've made one like that, it is upstairs in my kids' room, so I don't have it to show you. But I'll put a video of the other one with the closed mouth. So I would say this pattern is possibly intermediate to advanced. You can simplify it if you need to. If you do this with some of your art classes, design classes, anything like that, please tag me. I would love to see them. If you've used my tutorial in any way, that would be amazing. Look at those eyes. If you have any questions, chuck them down in the comments and I'll do my best to answer them. Enjoy my tutorial on how I made Fuggler.
Right, so let's start with our material list. The pattern that I created for this doll is linked in the description bar below, and it's for free. First up, the fabric we'll need is the main fur fabric. Next is a pink cotton, so this I used for the mouth. A contrasting cotton for the belly. Some toy stuffing. Air dry clay, and I've used the Fimo brand for this. Felt. These will be for extra pieces. Fabric marker. Scissors, of course. Sewing pins. Hand sewing needle. Thread to match your fabric. Acrylic paint. Toy doll eyes. You can get these from Spotlight as well. UV resin. And of course, to go with that, you need the curing light. Mod Podge. A hot glue gun. And some sticks. Firstly, when you download and print out your paper pattern, cut out all your pieces, ready to cut your fabric. So here is the pieces all cut out. Here are the pieces all cut out, ready to go. Now you cut out your pattern pieces from your fabric, and this is the most easiest part. It's pretty self-explanatory, so follow through and cut out all the pieces that you require. The front and back for the body, the arms, the feet, and then the ears. And on the pattern it describes how many of each you will need as well. Once you've cut out all of your pieces for the main fur fabric, next is to grab your contrasting belly piece. If you are choosing to do that, grab your fabric and cut that out. Cut the eyes out of the felt. If you are choosing to have an open mouth, cut your mouth piece out of your fabric as well. And there you should have all your pieces ready to begin assembly. Okay, so the very first sewing step when making this toy is to work out your mouth. So for this one, I mark in with the template where the placement of the mouth will go on the belly piece and carefully cut a hole. Alright, so once the hole has been made, I'm going to grab my pink mouth fabric and fold it in half and pin on the short sides. Then sew straight down those short sides as well. I'm pretty sure I left about a half a centimetre seam allowance for these. Alright, so this is what it should look like. Now I'm going to try to match it wrong sides together. So the little seam matches the corner of one corner and the other little seam should hopefully match the other side of the corner of the mouth. Pin that in place. Jump over to the sewing machine and very carefully sew around that mouth. Once again, here it's only a small seam allowance, so about a half a centimetre seam allowance for this mouth part. Okay, so this is what it looks like. So now the good side is facing towards us, and I'm just going to pop the mouth back through so you can see that the seam is inside the toy and not inside the mouth. Now this is the next advanced version. You could leave your mouth like that, or if you want to give it a little bit more shape, what you can do is, I suppose it's called bagging it out, as if you were making a tote bag or something like that. On the corners you mark, fold it carefully into a little triangle and mark where you're going to sew. Then very carefully sew that little triangle down. And this is what it should look like. And you can trim that if you wish. But now you can see it's got a little bit more of a boxy kind of seam there. And I'm also adding, this is an extra step I'm adding just to kind of make it look more mouth-like. So I'm folding that again, the mouth piece, and I'm going to just do like a faux seam. It doesn't really have any function, it's just a aesthetic thing for it to look more like a mouth, or the back of the mouth, I suppose you'd say. So there we go. That is the mouth done. All right, so now you grab your good piece, your fur piece of the front of your ugly toy, and put your belly piece down. Using the template that I have added, you can carefully work out where your belly piece needs to go and pin it down. I'm flipping it over and I'm going to mark where the mouth is on the back, because you need to cut a hole very carefully. Cut a hole where the mouth is, just a little bit smaller than the actual mouth you've sewn. And this will be where you pop the mouth. You can push the mouth through all layers basically. Pin it down. I'm just gently wiggling the mouth out so it pops through to the other side. And then I just very carefully stitched around the belly piece, attaching it to the front body piece. So next I'm going to very carefully fix the mouth, and I just stitched it around and stitched it down to the fur fabric. You can see, like, basically it's a top stitched around the mouth, and trimmed away any of the excess at the back so it's not bulky. Alright, and so this is what your mouth should look like. Next is building the limbs and the ears. So take your feet pieces and your ear pieces and your arm pieces and put your furry sides together. So right sides together and pin them all down. Next, jump over to the sewing machine and do about a centimetre seam allowance all the way around. Trim where needed because this fabric is quite bulky, so keep your seams quite small if you can. Remember to leave the opening, so you're only sewing the curve on the feet and you're leaving the straight side open for stuffing. You can see the ears, the arms and the little feet are done. Now you need to pop them right way out, and I'm probably going to stuff them at the same time. So I'm using a pencil just to help me shove out the corners a bit better. There are obviously sewing tools for this, but I'm just using what I have on hand. Yeah, and then just very carefully push your seams out and begin stuffing. So I'm using the pencil again just to help me shove the toy stuffing in there. And pack it in, put more in than you think you need. Yeah, that's my tip. am stitching the hole closed. So the top hole on the straight side, I'm stitching that closed just to help with the movement of the fabric. The fabric is quite, let's be honest, it's not the best fabric, the easiest fabric to work with. So to stop the movement when I'm attaching the limbs to the actual body, I am just doing a basting stitch. I'm planning out here where all the parts need to go, making sure to measure them and space them out correctly, or what, you know, using your eyeball to make sure it looks right. This is how I attach my limbs. So I found it easier just to hand stitch them as well. Once again, this fabric is really irritating and there's a lot of movement, and if they move, the arms and legs look weird and they're out of whack. So I just hand stitched these down to start off with so they wouldn't move around under the sewing machine too much. I just found this worked a lot better, just to keep everything in place and to stop too much movement or pulling with the fabric, as this fabric is a little bit stretchy too. Look out, I've got a visitor coming to chat while I do some stitching. Where'd she go? She disappeared. There she goes. She went past me. See, little pop up. So I don't know the technical stitching terms for hand stitching. I call this the whip stitch. I'm assuming it's a whip stitch, but it's just tacking them down. It's that's the only purpose at the minute, so it doesn't have to be perfect. So this is what it looks like once I've tacked all those pieces down. Working on the ears was a little bit more of a challenge because of the funny little curve, but I got there in the end, and it's just very simply kind of just making the fabric work for you, giving it a little bit of a pull if you need to, teeny tiny bit. Don't use the stretch too much of this fabric. Another visitor there in the corner. All right, so I'm actually going to sew them down with the machine to secure them properly. Next up, I'm going to finish the body construction. So make sure that all your little limbs and your ears are folded inside, and you lay your back piece of your body over the top like a little burrito sandwich thingy. Okay, and remember to leave a gap at the top because you're going to pop everything back the right way out. So once again, just for my own sanity, I went around the edge and I did do another whip stitch just to tack everything in place. I was very worried about the movement of the limbs and things inside there, and this just gave me a bit more control because obviously the legs and arms and ears are quite bulky, and they can get caught under the machine. So here is that hand stitching done, and next I will jump over to the machine and do a more secure seam. Remember to pin everything down so it doesn't move while you're sewing, and go very, very slowly because this is really, really thick. Lots of layers and stuffing that have to go under your machine needle and through your needle plate. So just go slow, take your time, and make sure you're focusing on getting a nice even seam allowance as well. My dog just left me. She got bored of me talking. That's rude. All right, as you can see, I'm stopping. I stop constantly to readjust, do a few stitches, stop again, readjust, move the foot around, move the toy around if I need to, depending on the curve. This part is very important, so take your time and go really slowly. So here's the finished seam. Remember, there's a hole there. Now the next job is to flip everything the right way out. And this might take a little bit of fendangling because you've got all the bits and pieces floating around in there that need to pop back out. But just take your time, very carefully pop it all back out. Make sure you poke your corners if you need to. Next up is stuffing the body. Yay! So you nearly finished the Fuggler part. The actual sewing part is almost complete. But, you know, there's more steps because it's me. So stuff the body. So this is what she looks like at the minute, with the majority of the sewing completed. Next step is to stitch up the head hole. And so with this particular stitch, I like to do the one that can be hidden. And I've forgotten how I describe it to my students, but it's basically a little bit over here and a little bit over there. So you're jumping from one side of the fabric and then over to the other. And then when you pull it tight and it kind of comes together. A little bit on this side, then you jump over and you take a little bit on that side, pull it in, and when it comes in it looks terrifyingly like skin being sewn to back together. Why does my brain go there? A little bit on that side, jump back over to the other one, a little bit on that side, pull in, and that kind of brings it in nicely. So carry on doing that until you have closed up the head hole. Weird thing to say. Now this is another added optional step, but I wanted to kind of tack the mouth down so it stayed within and kept that kind of 3D look. So I'm just kind of doing these little tiny tack stitches from the back of the mouth onto the back of the head, just to stop it from moving around or flopping it, like coming back out. Yeah, so that was my solution. next is construct the eyes. So these are the doll eyes. I just got them from Spotlight. They're quite large. What I'm going to do is just give them a quick sand just to kind of roughen them up a bit, ready to take the paint. And I gave them a coat of white paint, and I think I did a couple of coats on these. And the plan with the eyeballs is just a nice purpley shade for the eyes. Once the eyes are done, this is where the UV resin comes into play, and I'm just going to really carefully coat the eyeballs and try and get a nice even coat of resin. So obviously don't get this on your hands or your skin. I'm trying really, really careful. I couldn't find any gloves that day, so I'm trying really, really careful not to get it on my skin. And then I'm just going to pop it outside into the sunshine and wait for them to set. Now I'm going to construct the eyepieces. So I have the pieces of felt that we cut out at the start, the eyelids and the back of the eye. So I'm just going to really carefully pin them and just readjust with some scissors if the overlapping is a bit weird or I wanted to change the look of the eyes. Any overhang, you just kind of trim it off if you need to. And get the eyes roughly how you like them. And I'm just going to grab a purple thread to match the purple felt and really carefully hand stitch the, great shot here. I'm just going to hand stitch the inner corner of the eyes. Same on the other side. I think this is called a whip stitch. Alright, and then start to whip stitch all the way around the circle, attaching the eyelid to the back of the eye. Repeat obviously for the other eyeball. I also ended up just kind of going around the outline of the eyelid with the purple thread. I just like the look of it. So there we go, there's the finished eyeball. Next, I'm going to place them onto the doll's face and then once again, very carefully pin them and hand stitch them down. that's the eyeballs attached and done. Next up, construct the teeth and nose. For this section, we're going to get out the air dry clay, and I'm going to very carefully just make a bunch of teeny tiny little balls. That will be the teeth. The easiest way to do that is to just roll out a sausage and then equally portion out the clay, roll them into balls, and then really carefully just kind of sculpt them into teeth shapes. They don't have to be perfect either. It really depends on your idea and your design. So now that I'm happy with the teeth, I'm going to jump over and start sculpting the nose. Using the nose template from the pattern, I'm just going to try to roughly sculpt a schnoz to fit that size of the paper pattern there. Once you're finished sculpting your teeth and your nose, set them aside to dry. Alright, so it's been 24 hours later and it's time to start painting. I'm just going to give the nose a pretty simple, dark, shiny, black, bluey kind of shade. So just really carefully using your acrylic paints, paint your teeth and your nose to your desired tones and shades. I'm going to give these teeth a little bit of like a yellowy, creamy yellow tinge, so they're not pure white. Once you've done all that, you're happy with all your colored pieces, I'm going to grab the resin again for the nose, and I'm just going to carefully add a layer of resin to help with the shiny wet nose situation. Once again, forgot my gloves, but trying really hard not to touch the resin. And then, so for the teeth, instead of using resin, I've just mixed up some Mod Podge and very carefully coating that to seal the paint onto the air dry clay. Once all of the nose and teeth have dried, it's time to hot glue them onto your toy, starting from the middle teeth and working my way out just to help with the spatial, well, my spatial awareness, honestly, but just to help with the spacing of the teeth. You can choose to make your front teeth gappy if you want. You can choose to not have any teeth at all. So I'm just adding a blob of hot glue and really carefully attaching them on there. this is what they look like. And here is the nose that I will hot glue right there. There we go. Perfect. Lastly, I'm just going to add a couple of little final touches, and I've decided to add a teeny tiny heart to the belly as a little patch, and I'm just going to hand stitch that on. And now it's finally time for the reveal. Here she is, Fuggler, in all her finished glory. So this was really fun to make, and I would love to make more. Different colours, different fur, different mouths, different eyes. You could change all the things. If you need any more help or have any more questions, if I've forgotten to say something in the video, please just send me a comment. I hope you enjoyed this video. That's about it for me for now. I'll be back whenever I can. Thanks, bye.